Welcome back to the LeverUp AMA series. I'm Marcus. Today we're going deep on something most traders never think about because it happens underneath the trade, LVUSD. James is here from the LeverUp team. James, let's start simple. Someone opens a position with USDC collateral. What actually happens to that USDC?
It goes into the vault, but the protocol doesn't just hold that USDC and track a balance against it directly. It mints LVUSD, a protocol-native synthetic dollar, and settles the position in that instead. The USDC sits in the vault. The position accounting happens in LVUSD.
That's an extra step. Why not just track the USDC balance directly? Simpler seems better.
It would be simpler, and it's actually how a lot of LP-based perp dexes work. The LP pool's USDC balance is the thing that pays out winning trades directly. That works well when there's a pool of USDC sized to cover potential payouts, sitting there regardless of whether traders happen to be winning at any given moment.
And LeverUp doesn't have that kind of pool.
Right, LeverUp's VMMV doesn't rely on an externally supplied LP pool the way that model does. So minting LVUSD against posted collateral and settling positions in that unit instead of the vault's raw USDC is what lets the accounting work without one.
Walk me through why that specifically solves the problem.
The vault's actual USDC reserve and the circulating LVUSD used for position accounting are related, but they don't have to move in lockstep on every single trade. That gap is what absorbs the fact that, at any given moment, aggregate trader profit and loss across the platform isn't zero. Someone's up, someone's down, and the settlement layer needs room to reflect that without requiring the vault's literal USDC balance to match exactly at every instant.
Okay, so if LVUSD isn't backed one by an immovable USDC reserve at all times, what stops it from just drifting off its dollar peg?
That's the part that has to be actively defended, not assumed. LVUSD tracks a TWAP, a time-weighted average price. When that TWAP drops below 99 cents and circulating LVUSD exceeds the vault's USDC reserves, the protocol runs an LV auction, minting and auctioning new LV, using the proceeds to buy back the excess LVUSD and burning it.
You said and they're not or. Both conditions have to be true.
Both matter, yes. A below-peg price alone doesn't trigger an auction if the vault's USDC still covers circulating LVUSD. The auction is specifically a response to LVUSD supply outrunning the reserve behind it, not a reaction to ordinary price noise. That's a narrower mechanism than a blanket, defend the peg whenever it drifts, rule would be. It only spends LV when there's an actual reserve shortfall to address.
Why does that distinction matter in practice?
Because it keeps the mechanism targeted. If the protocol auctioned LV every time LVUSD's price wobbled slightly, even when the reserve was fine, that would be spending value to solve a problem that doesn't exist yet. Tying the trigger to an actual reserve shortfall means the auction only fires when there's a real gap to close.
Does this mean people should think of LVUSD as a stablecoin they could hold or use elsewhere, like USDC or DAI?
No, and that's worth being clear about. LVUSD isn't meant to circulate as a general-purpose stablecoin outside the protocol. It's a settlement unit scoped to LeverUp's own position accounting, with a stability mechanism built specifically around that job, not a broader monetary instrument.
You mentioned MON-collateralized positions work differently. Same idea, different asset.
Same pattern, yes. MON-collateralized positions settle in LVMON, following the same minting and peg logic as LVUSD does for USDC. But there's a specific edge case worth calling out. What happens when the MON and LVMON balances in the vault get out of sync?
What happens?
When that pair becomes imbalanced, position settlements shift to being conducted in LVUSD instead, and no additional LVMON gets minted beyond the amount of MON actually circulating in the vault. So LVMON issuance stays capped at the MON actually sitting in the vault, rather than minting past that and letting the imbalance settle in LVUSD as an afterthought.
Why is that guardrail necessary? What would go wrong without it?
Without a cap, LVMON could in principle be minted beyond what the vault's actual MON reserves support, which would reintroduce exactly the kind of unbacked issuance risk the LVUSD design is meant to avoid in the first place. Capping issuance at real MON in the vault and rerouting the imbalance into LVUSD settlement instead keeps the two synthetic systems from drifting apart in a way that could compound.
So this is really one pattern applied twice, with a specific safeguard where the two systems meet.
That's a fair way to put it. It's not LVUSD in isolation, it's a design pattern the protocol applies consistently, with a guardrail at the one point where two parallel synthetic systems could otherwise get out of sync with each other.
Last question. For a trader who's never going to read the docs on any of this, does it matter?
Not in the sense that they need to manage it. The minting, peg defense, and settlement mechanics happen underneath the trade itself. Collateral goes in, and what the trader actually interacts with is the position size, fees, liquidation threshold, and PNL. What this layer enables is what's visible on the surface: settlement that runs on protocol risk parameters and a synthetic accounting layer, instead of depending on the size of an externally supplied LP pool sized to cover payouts directly in the underlying collateral asset.
James, that's a genuinely clearer picture of what's happening under the hood than I expected. Appreciate you walking through it.
Anytime.